You are an influence to other people. You have credibility. In this episode of the Rodney O Podcast, we continue our journey in our survival guide to 2020-2021 as we read through the Gospel of John. So join me in this episode and continue to share with this episode with others and the whole podcast with other people. Because on this episode of the Rodney O Podcast, I'm going to talk to you. I'm going to talk all about you. I'm going to talk about who you are. And I want everybody to know that their past does not define them. Stay tuned. Welcome to the Rodney O Podcast. So if you listen to this podcast often, you will know that I've been in ministry in one form or another for several years, for a lot of years now. And one thing that kept my confidence very low when I started was my past. And the things that I'd done in my past kind of haunted me, especially when I started. And so typically, it's not bad necessarily for a pastor to have a bad past. That it's not bad that they've done things in the past, but there, in my opinion, and what I've seen, is interesting enough. There's popular ones that if you've had this past, it's going to kind of help you with credibility maybe and being able to identify with people. And then there are some that aren't so popular that people really don't kind of like their pastor to have in their past. And so some of the popular ones, if I can explain, would be something like, recovering drug addict or an addict of any kind. They struggle with something, alcohol, drugs, or whatever. And they overcame it, the whole I used to be in prison thing, and now I found the Lord, that whole thing, people kind of like that stuff. But the not so popular things, there's the obvious, which I, won't really dive into, but the child predator things and the pedophile, those things are very, very horrible that, you'll probably have a hard time convincing people, even though, God can do anything. But those are things that probably wouldn't be so popular if your pastor had that in the background. But you can use your imagination as far as what is acceptable and what is not. But believe it or not, one that's very questionable is the single pastor. And I've met many that were single and not married, but and I fell into that category when I first started ministry. But especially if you're single with a kid, but you're never married, that one's interesting. And that's the category I fit in when I first started ministry. Single, have a young child, but never married. And so it's kind of interesting because I never did feel credible enough sometimes, especially when I started, that people, they had assumptions about that. They would see me and a lot of them would think that I was divorced, right? And a lot of people usually get over that, like, okay, you had this and it didn't work out. You found God or whatever it may be, right? It's more prevalent now to where pastors are divorced, and that's fine. But having a kid and never married is just kind of interesting because they're not sure. They try to place, did this happen while you were in ministry? What's going on? And they don't really ask, but you can feel it when they talk to you. Because some people, they wouldn't even listen to when I'm explaining it. They would refer to, I remember one conversation, one person kept referring to my son's mother as my ex-wife. And I had to correct them. Oh, well, I was never married back then. And then they said it again, ex-wife. And I said, oh, yeah, but, remember, I was never married. And then they said it a third time. And at that point, I just let it go because they have their assumptions. And so I am married now. And, in the past, I was unsure and always uneasy. And I'm here to tell you today that you don't have to have your past define you or make you feel like you don't have any credibility. So I'm glad you guys are joining me today. I want you guys to stay tuned because this is a good one and this is what we're talking about. You are credible. Welcome to the Rodney O Podcast. So today on the Rodney O Podcast, we're going to continue the series that I titled Survival Guide to 2020-2021. Kind of added that 2021 because of the new year here. But this is John's instruction manual. And today's topic is titled, You Are Credible. And, I've been teaching weekly and going through the book of John, the Gospel of John, not to be confused with the books of John, 1, 2, and 3, 1 John, 2 John, 3 John. And today we're going to go and we're going to read through John chapter 4, verses 39 through 42, a little small snippet today. And my hope is that those who are unfamiliar with the Bible can get like a good intro into it. And I believe that John is a good start for newcomers. And so those who are more proficient can probably get a refresher, a review. And hopefully if they like it, they'll pass it on to other people who may need to hear what I'm saying today. And the reason why I wanted to do this is because 2020 and even at the start of 2021, this crisis continues, right? We have a crisis around here. A lot of you understand about COVID. We've been dealing with that for a long time now. Racial tension. And this is really relevant now, and that's political fighting. Very relevant, political fighting right now. And so with all this going on, I kind of want to give a bright side. I kind of want to give some good news. And there is good news. We just need to do our part. And so as we look at this, sometimes we feel like we're not good enough, right? That we're someone who doesn't have that much authority in certain circumstances or a situation. That when we speak, people just don't listen. That they know our past, right? That they kind of know about us and say, who is this guy? Who is this girl? Who is this person? Right? They kind of know our mistakes and they kind of keep that in their mind and keeps bringing that up about, okay, I know who you really are. And maybe sometimes it's just in our head. Maybe sometimes in the past we messed up or we did something and it kind of haunts us and it keeps us from moving on and moving past it. Because we're in a society where people will cancel you if they find out if you did something they disagree with or if you did something in the past that they don't like. Maybe you're labeled because of your faith and beliefs or your political views or your opinion on certain topics and you're kind of labeled a certain way. You are this, you are that. You are on this side, you're on that side, and they kind of box you into that. And this causes people, a lot of people, to judge and hate you because of a different opinion or a different point of view. And because of that, sometimes this can make us have a negative view of ourselves, makes us have low self-esteem. We fail to value ourselves highly. We want to seize the opportunity and show up like I mentioned in part 9. If you need part 9, go back and listen to part 9. And we want to take advantage of it because it is ready for us. And that's what I talked about in part 10, about opportunities that we want to take and seize. And then we want to take advantage of it because it's ready for us. So parts 9 and 10 are very important. They lead up to this. But I tell you, there's something that kind of stops us from doing this, from taking advantage of this opportunity that's already ready for us. It's right there for us to take. And there's this force, there's an energy, there's an enemy out there that wants us to have self-doubt. And I'm talking about spiritual things, right? There's a spiritual enemy out there. Negativity is a strong force from this enemy, from Satan, who doesn't want us to take the opportunity that God has provided for us. If you recall last week, and if not, again, go back and listen to last week's podcast, last part. If you recall, I mentioned how the hard work is already done for us. And that this harvest I'm talking about, this harvest is ready for us. So many of us are kind of stuck, right? We're paralyzed because we just won't act. We won't take that next step because we have fear. We're scared of what? We're scared of the unknown. We have fear. We're scared of what? We're scared of failure. We have this fear that the past will catch up to us, that it will haunt us. But you see, when we step out in faith, and when we realize that we are doing the work that God has called us to do, that when we embrace our God-given gifts and abilities, nothing can stop us because the hard work has already been done. It's just up to us to take action and to act. You see, here's the truth here. When we act, not just act, but when we act in truth, our past, our shortcomings, or any negativity cannot stop us from doing our part, which is bringing this world back to good. I talk about that all the time. When we act in truth, our past and our shortcomings and any negativity can't stop us from doing our part and bringing this world back to good. And you ask, what makes us qualified? What makes me qualified to help others and bring this world back to good? Well, you see, we have a creator that created a harvest for us. The harvest, our neighbor. people who are our neighbor. Who are our neighbor? It's everybody. The harvest is that person who is struggling. The harvest is that family in need, or that family that's having a rough time, or that person that's having a rough time. Our harvest is that depressed person who needs to know that there is a creator that loves them. And the beautiful thing about us is we can choose to be influenced and touched by the creator. He knows everything about us. He knows our likes, our dislikes, our habits, our tendencies, what we want to do and what we refuse to do. He knows everything about us. And because of that, he knows how to gift us so that we can do good all around the world. So the reason we are qualified is because all of our training and abilities come from this perfect creator who knows exactly what he's doing. And he knows exactly what abilities to give you to make you effective and productive. And I get this from the Gospel of John, chapter 4, verses 39 to 42. I'm going to read that now, and you can follow with me in that. But it's about the Samaritans, right? And the little backstory, if you go back to parts 9 and 10, Jesus talked to this Samaritan woman at the well, and he kind of told her about her and the men she's with and all her background and everything else. A past that's not great. She's a woman, and then she has a bad past, right? And so that should stop her from doing anything. If anybody felt that they didn't have credibility, this woman would be it back then in biblical days. But let's read. Many of the Samaritans from that town believed in him because of the woman's testimony. He told me everything I ever did. So when the Samaritans came to him, they urged him to stay with them, and they stayed 2 days. And because of his words, many more became believers. They said to the women, "We no longer believe just because of what you said. Now we have heard for ourselves, and we know that this man really is the Savior of the world." And so we see here that this woman, she's given this testimony, and the people believe because of her. Somebody who's not supposed to have credibility, right? Somebody with a checkered past. Because, Jesus says in the past verse, and again, I go to the last part to read this, is that he says, yes, get your husband. She said, I don't have a husband. She said, yeah, that's right. You've been with several men, and the person you're with isn't your husband. And so back then, how should she have felt? Like, as far as having no credibility. I mean, people are not going to listen to this woman because, especially back in biblical days, the status of women back then, right? But because of her testimony, people believed. And so you have to really take that to heart and really understand how powerful that is. And you got to ask yourself, why did people believe because of her? And that, again, because the hard work is already done. The harvest. God did it already. But even that, when they saw Jesus and they listened to him, they believed in him because of the words that he said, and many of them became believers. And they even said, okay, not just because of what you said, but we've heard for ourselves. We know for ourselves. And that's always what I tell people, is that you go ahead and people are going to listen to you and everything else. But when they go for themselves, and when they listen for themselves, and when they read for themselves, when they pray for themselves, they will be touched and changed. We don't change anybody. Only God does. And so the only thing that can stop us, right? The only thing that can stop us is ourselves. That's the only thing that can stop us is ourselves. When we recognize the Creator and when we let him influence us, we can do anything. You see, we get credibility from the Creator. That's why others listen to us. Experience, if you experience this long enough, it will teach you that when you are truly using your God-given gifts, you can accomplish all the tasks to bring the world back to good. When you're truly working in your gifts, you will notice a difference. So we all need to just tap into something bigger and more powerful than ourselves. Because we all experience failure, whether it be a goal that we fail, a relationship, a job, a task, whatever it may be. But we can't let those failures define us. We have to learn from them. See, when we combine our failures with learning in God, suddenly we find that we can have success. But more importantly, not only success, we can have influence. You see, if we buy into the fact that we are nothing more than a failure and we can never be influential, then the enemy, the devil, has won, because he will stop you from helping other people. Because we were created for a purpose. We need to care about fulfilling our purpose. We need to find that it is not a difficult task when we are truly inspired by God and living out his plan for us by using our God-given gifts. So what do? First of all, you give your past to God. Whatever's in the past, give it to him. Of course, learn from it, but learn from it and move on. Don't stay in your past. Like the woman at the well tried to do. She tried to stay in her past by going there at a time of day where nobody's going to be there. But Jesus knows her. He was there, right? And also, we need to learn what God has for you. And this is by devotion, prayer, reading, and meditation, talking to God, whatever it may be. That's how you understand who he is, and you can learn what he has for you. What's your God-given gift? What does he want us to do? And then third, we can go out and influence other people. We can go out and be an influence to people because we want to help bring this world back to good. We'll continue this series next week, but after all, like I always say, please feel free to dialogue with me. My YouTube channel, Rodney O Weekly, shows how I am living what I speak. Please be sure to subscribe to that channel. The link is in the podcast description, or you can simply go to YouTube and search Rodney O Weekly. Remember this. I want to inspire, encourage, and motivate all of you as you navigate this journey that we call life. Thanks for joining me, and I will see you guys in the